I've been struggling to write this video for a while now, mainly because I think there's a lot of nuance to this particular topic, and because my previous attempts to cover it were not up to the standard I hold myself to. And hey, are you even listening to me? Jesus fucking Christ. Hang on. Today I wanted to talk about declining attention spans and whether or not it's actually something to be worried about. Now, when I said earlier there was a lot of nuance to this topic, I also mean that there's a lot to unpack as well. For example, did you know that the whole human attention spans are less than that of a goldfish now is not really a neuroscience study, nor is it anything scientifically peer-reviewed? Yes, in fact, this idea that attention spans have declined over the last few years is actually not any sort of scientific research, but instead market research. And while market research can be useful for the purposes it serves, i.e. marketing, it's almost always not useful for the purposes of our everyday lives. That's because market research is less about understanding human beings and the world around us as it is understanding how the market influences humans and how humans influence the market. I would like to thank the Book Leo for her video on this topic because it really opened my mind about all of this. I highly recommend watching her video, but to summarize the things that stood out to me the most, her video talks about the various assumptions and facts surrounding social media, attention spans, and the seemingly declining mental health of our younger generation. And while to many of us, I think we would blame our poor mental health on social media, the Book Leo makes a good point in her video by stating that social media might not be the cause of our issues, but rather the coping mechanism we use with the issues that we face. She also posits that instead of looking to social media as the root of evil, we should be more mindful of why we are using it in the first place, and if possible, coping with our personal issues in a more productive way than just endlessly scrolling something like YouTube Shorts or TikTok. Declining attention spans also applies greatly to you if you are a writer, because as this source shows, the average person only reads about 16 minutes a day now, and that's including subtitles for movies. No one reads books anymore, and your grandpa might view that as an ultimate tragedy, but for most of us under the age of 30, we might not see that as a huge issue, unless you're a writer like me. But the big question is, are our attention spans really getting shorter, and is social media the cause of our declining intelligence or lack of focus? The truth is, no, not really. You see, this idea of declining attention spans actually comes from market research conducted by none other than Microsoft. And the study itself isn't really even concluding that humans as a whole have declining attention spans. No, actually, it's the media outlets who translate the study into something more sensational who have been spreading that message. If you go into the market research itself, you'll find something a lot more mundane and business-oriented. The study is not about how terrible it is that our attention spans are declining and we can no longer focus on anything due to social media. It's about how social media and the ease of access to things we enjoy has made consumers a lot quicker in deciding what they do and do not want to spend their time engaging in. See an ad? You get ad block. You skip the ad, or you click off the website to look at something else while it plays. Or maybe you purchase YouTube Premium and give me a few extra dollars. Or maybe you subscribe to this channel, I don't know. Microsoft is not concerned about your mental health, though. They're concerned whether or not you're engaging with their marketing and listening to their sales pitch so that you will inevitably buy your next Windows computer. And it makes sense that we are better at determining what we do and do not want to watch than we ever have been. After all, with such an abundance of entertainment through things like YouTube and TikTok, it is far easier to scroll past and find what hits our niche than it is to sit and watch a 30-second ad for a product we don't care about. Social media has put the world at our fingertips, and we are conditioned to only interact with anything if we are promised that it is not a waste of our time. Or, well, if you consider not a waste of our time to be something that has entertained you. Microsoft and companies like it are interested in making ads and marketing which keep your attention. But when we have so many companies trying to pull our attention in different directions, then we're inevitably going to have people whose attention is pulled so frequently that the window of attention spans is going to get smaller and smaller with time. The ad marketing space is an ever-evolving, hyper-competitive space. Every brand and company is fighting to exist in your mind, so much so that you might have become blind to it. Even if you were to look around yourself right now, there's no doubt that you could see and list at least 10 different brands right now, whether it's a water bottle, your computer, your phone, or even this ad. Welcome back, non-ad block users and non-YouTube premium subscribers, and thank you for the ad revenue. Anyways, this study about declining attention spans is also something that content creators are aware of to one degree or another. Either intuitively or with full knowledge, us content creators know that we must keep your attention with interesting topics, or the algorithms we platform ourselves on will not promote our content. I'm not here to say company bad, advertiser bad, study bad. No, I think I'm more interested in finding the hope within this situation, because knowing about this study will also reveal to us that it is something which can be changed and influenced by the things around us. I know a lot of people have a love-hate relationship with social media. I know a lot of people who are terminally online. We often see the headline of declining attention spans and believe it because it feels true. We notice ourselves being unable to focus on any one individual thing. We self-diagnose or even get actual diagnosis for things like ADHD. And I'm not here to say that ADHD is caused by social media either, or that it is overdiagnosed or whatever. I'm saying that your social media usage is likely not the cause of it, but perhaps it is the coping mechanism. The book Leo covers this in her video as well, but I think it's worth repeating. Are we unable to focus because social media is the cause? Or are we unable to focus because we are using social media to avoid underlying issues within ourselves? Is social media causing us to be mentally unwell? Or is social media simply a distraction which does not help us overcome the issues which cause us to be mentally unwell? Yes, we might scroll through things like Instagram and Facebook and see how much better everyone else seems to be doing and compare our own lives to it and then become sad about it. But is that because of social media or because we lack the motivation or ability to do things for ourselves? Someone just had a wonderful vacation. Good for them. Too bad you haven't been able to go on something so expensive in a while. Now you feel bad. But is the reminder of your issues what causes your issues? No, it's the lack of money to go on a vacation for yourself. It's what you lack in your life that is making you unhappy, not the reminder of what you lack. And we might also say that social media portrays an unrealistic view of other people. We only see everyone else's best moments, and yet no one behind those posts is ever as happy as they seem to an outside viewer. But humans have always felt that way, I think. The grass is greener on the other side is a term which predates social media for a reason. We always believe someone else has it better because we are discontent with what we have in our current lives. And our happiness does not always lie within expensive items or luxurious materials. There is not a true standard to making people happy. There are only individual desires and the capability to achieve those desires. A house, a car, a dog, and a wife and kids is not the recipe for everyone's happiness, nor should it be. I think when social media ends up making us unhappy, we should introspect a little bit deeper onto why that is. What are we using social media to avoid? What can we confront or cope with in a healthier way? And does this issue even need a better coping mechanism? After all, social media can make us happy and well connected with other human beings as well. The majority of my good friends are people who I keep in contact with over great distances. Some of them are people who moved away from me, and others are people who have always lived far away, but who I have been able to meet through the power of social media. I don't feel unhappy that I cannot always meet my friends in person. I'm rather content with being able to hang out in a Discord VC every day and just chat. But there are also times I felt unhappy with using social media all the time. So I picked up a hobby that would force me to get out of the house and meet new people while we learn a new skill together. I was not unhappy because I used social media too much. I was unhappy because I was not getting out of my house enough to do something new. I got in a routine and it was no longer making me happy. So I decided to change my routine and do something that did make me happy. But not everyone is capable of getting out of their house and paying a subscription to a combat sports gym like I am, nor is everyone going to be happy as I am fighting another human being. Some people are addicted to social media because it is the only thing around them that provides some sort of escape from their shitty situation. Whether it's from a lack of money, a lack of time, or a lack of motivation, social media will only require whatever small amount of time you can offer it, while other things will often require all three. But why do we have a lack of money, time, or motivation? And how can we overcome those obstacles? In my personal example, I knew what I wanted to do, but at the time I was feeling bad about myself. I also did not have a job to pay for luxurious things like a monthly subscription. I had all the time in the world, but I did not have the ability to do what I wanted. And so a good amount of that time was put into social media instead. Mind you, I also put a lot of my time into writing and reading things which inspired me. However, when I was lacking motivation or a writing goal to strive towards, all the time in the world could not get me to write anything worthwhile. Once again, social media comes in to substitute and fill the void for something that I lack, because social media rarely requires your money or your motivation to consume it. It asks only for your time and attention, time which is limited and attention which is valuable to companies who want your money, or what little of it you have. But social media is not the only pastime that exists. There are inexpensive and low-effort hobbies which meet the same requirements but simultaneously provide you with a better coping mechanism. You will have to find what those are on your own because those things are going to be different from person to person. However, I think it's important to recognize the role social media plays in our lives so that when we use it, we are using it properly. Every time we acknowledge that social media might be our crutch, it is an opportunity for us to stand on our own 2 feet instead. When it comes to the state of the world and the intelligence of other people or lack thereof, I tend to be on the more optimistic side. It's my personal belief that we're all collectively experiencing a Dunning-Kruger effect when it comes to how much we know about each other and the world around us. What used to be hidden behind closed doors is now almost always put up to the public eye. Where most people may not know a red flag when they see it, some people might point it out and allow more people to see those red flags. And sometimes people will see those red flags being pointed out and think that those red flags are actually permissible because without social media, no one would be complaining about them. And because we also see the inherent stupidity of other human beings more often, we also tend to believe that we are just getting dumber and dumber as a species. The more we come to learn, the more we understand how little we actually know at all. Hence, the Dunning-Kruger effect. But people have always been ignorant. People have always done things similar to what we do now. The only difference is how visible it is and how aware of it we are. And it's my personal belief that it is better to dispel illusions than it is to live in ignorant bliss behind them, because the latter will only make us feel happy while cruelty and evil still persists, where the former allows us to be aware of and perhaps influence change towards the betterment of those bad things. Knowledge of the world and what happens in it might make us unhappy, but that does not mean it should keep us entrenched in our dismal situations. We know what is wrong, and so now that we know there is a problem, we can collectively work towards a solution. We can also see people who actively obstruct progress, and we begin to think about how impossible solving problems is. But obstacles will always exist, and problems are not always easy to solve. Sometimes it will require failure and a lot of time before any progress is made. Sometimes it will feel like we are standing still no matter how much we try to push forward, but that is only our perception. We are doom scrolling and spiraling not because social media is the cause of it, but because these things are happening in the world, and we must find ways to cope with that knowledge, even if we end up addicted to grief in the process. We see our rights being taken away, we see suffering, we see all of it. Some of us look to the past and think that our lives were better. And in some ways they were, but in a lot of ways that is our own blissful ignorance speaking. When we are children, we have blissful fantasies of being kings and queens in medieval times, only to learn how uncomfortable living in a castle really was, and how difficult it is to be the leader of a country. Or perhaps we think of how great the world would be if we had things such as AI assistants, holograms, and virtual reality. And when we get those things, it's amazing for all of a few weeks before we get used to it, and problems unique to those things start to arise. That's not a bad thing, by the way. Happiness is temporary, but so is sadness. These two things give one another meaning, and it is the motion between them which provides the variety that makes life meaningful. Things will always be better in our minds because human imagination is one of our most powerful tools. It is our nature to envision a better world. The struggles we endure in our age is a passing of greed, a temporary hold on the lives of everyone for which we will one day overcome. And even if the problems we face may seem greater or different because of the circumstances we face them in, they're only different. If social media is a mechanism for you to maintain an illusion of happiness, then perhaps it is time to confront reality. Otherwise, you will never truly be happy, nor will you be better off. I know it's difficult, but I also know that it is possible. Companies research this stuff and pay people to come up with ways to pull your attention easier. Notifications, red bubbles with numbers on the sides of an app, incomplete messages on your home screen, etc., etc. As we get better at finding what we want on social media, companies get better at pulling us in their direction. I don't know if I would necessarily view this as an evil or bad thing, it's just normal. And yet we could also point to it as the reason why we can't just switch off. I mean, yeah, we can delete all of our apps on our phones and computers, but once those apps are gone, the communication and notifications we've become accustomed to turn into a deafening silence. What do we even do with ourselves once social media is gone? Sure, we can fill our days with hobbies, but once again, hobbies cost money. We could work longer hours at our jobs, but not every job wants to pay overtime, and not everyone wants to work a 50-plus hour work week. We can find less expensive and less committed hobbies such as reading, but reading is as much a habit as it is a hobby. It's difficult to sit down and read. I mean, I struggle to bring myself to listen to an audiobook from time to time, simply because it requires me to focus on what's being said. I don't know if I have ADHD or not, but what I do know is that there's a sort of mental strain I get whenever I need to focus on any one thing for a specific amount of time, especially if it is something slow and dead silent like reading. When I was little, I would read a ton, during lessons, during lunch, the drive to and from school, and even before bed. And if I was cynical, I might say that this is a tragedy that I no longer read as much as I used to, that I've gotten worse, or that it's a shame that all I ever do is watch things and the most I read is manga. But I also remember back when I was a kid, that mental strain to bring myself to read was still there. Whenever I used to pick up a book, it always felt awkward in the beginning. I wasn't reading all the time because I loved reading. I was reading all the time because it was the only stimulating thing I could do, and because I am a very slow reader. I would have to reread the same passages over and over because my mind would just start thinking of other things while I was reading. And I also exaggerated about how much I would actually read, because when I think about it, I watched a ton of television as a kid, and the only reason I would read before bed was an effort to stay up past my bedtime. While I think reading is still a healthy and good habit to have, I'm also not going to pretend like I don't understand why people don't read anymore. There are so many more stimulating things to do these days, and the people who still read are the people who enjoy the level of stimulation that reading provides to them. But I also think that these days, most people don't give themselves a chance to slow down. No one gives themselves space to think. No one gives themselves drip feeds of dopamine, which leave us feeling satisfied and content, and perhaps even accomplished, instead of craving more and more as if it's some sort of drug addiction we're chasing. It's important to find hobbies which give us challenges, hobbies which are fun, but which only reward us in moderation, hobbies which give us an opportunity to turn off every once in a while, to leave our minds blank and open to wander and think. It doesn't have to be reading, and for a lot of people, these sorts of hobbies haven't left our generation. People paint Warhammer and tabletop RPG miniatures, for example. They pick up things like wood carving or sewing, art and writing. Even doing something like video editing and content creation is a hobby which can offer the same effect. If you are addicted to social media and self-pity, then you'll likely blame social media for why your life sucks. Feeling this way, to me, is a sign that you need more interests. It's not unfixable. Your life is not ruined just because you only feel happy when you get fake internet points. Sometimes it's up to us as people to acknowledge that our happiness is not always beyond our control, even if it is difficult to control. And as always with these videos, I don't have all the answers here. These are just my personal notes. I think it's important to keep ourselves honest when we talk about the influence of social media on our generation. I could think of a million different excuses to not write or make YouTube videos or do anything, but none of them would excuse the fact that I am the only person who's actually preventing myself from doing any of those things. At the end of the day, even if we may not be able to control every aspect of our lives or the conditions we live under, we can still have an influence on them, and we can still control how we react and perceive those conditions. And while sucking it up isn't a cure-all for getting a better life, it can be useful in some instances. I don't know. I've interacted with a lot of people who are social media addicts. People who obsess over every little bad thing that happens to them. Who scream and shout into the void on social media as they vent out their frustrations or mental breakdowns. And once again, I acknowledge that it's a way for them to cope about their lives, but I doubt it's the healthiest way for them to cope. I think it's more important to acknowledge that things like social media are neutral and uncaring. Indifference is the medicine for caring too much about something. And the less we try to demonize social media or make it out to be the best thing ever, the more we can look at it for what it truly is, and recognize when it's being used to supplement something we're missing from our lives. Basically, just chill the fuck out for a bit. You're gonna be okay, and if you think you're not okay, then it's important to put yourself in a position to be better. Return to that neutral state of just existing and not feeling good or bad about anything in life. Just exist. That much is enough. And sometimes it's preferable to always trying to chase happiness that will only ever be temporary. And when happiness does come, enjoy it and live in that moment too. Even if that moment might be temporary, there will be more moments to come. And when bad things happen, acknowledge that it will be just as temporary and fleeting. Except, unlike happiness, you can lessen the frequency that bad things happen with a bit of effort and good habits. But simple things are not always easy. And that's why you should watch this video that people don't often watch, where I go into detail about why simple things feel so difficult sometimes. Click the video and just chill out for a little while longer.